you know the future radio superstar might not come from radio at all? Or is it?
I think that's absolutely the case. You don't find many, if any, people nowadays young people, saying that they want to grow up to be a radio presenter. Many of them will say that they just want to present, that they just want to find an outlet for some thoughts that they've got. And that may start as a Vine, it then becomes an Instagram video, it then becomes a YouTube video, then they can see the content that they're making is actually getting a reaction, so they do a bit more of it. And what we're finding at Radio 1 in particular is that there's some really exciting talent out there who don't have to wait for radio to come along and say, oh, hey, why don't you try radio, or we think you've got some talent. That they aren't thinking, well, I'd like to get into radio one day, so I'll do hospital radio, and then I'll do student radio, and then I might do a bit of community radio, and then I'll find ILR. That route is no longer necessary. That there are superstars, genuine, huge superstars, who Radio 1 has worked with and who have done radio shows on Radio 1. But they're superstars who are stopped in the street, not necessarily because of the radio, but because they are so famous for the content that they've already created on YouTube off their own back.
So when you're looking for new talent now, you don't necessarily look to hospital radio or local radio stations around the UK, you turn to your computer.
Absolutely, and it may be that you've got some audience response that's particularly smart and witty, and if you then find yourself retweeting that, and actually that person's made a couple of videos, they're quite interesting, and you can find yourself that way broadening into new areas as well, and finding presenters that will bring with them not just some skills, but will bring with them potentially a large audience. You can find somebody that, if you were to take somebody like Zoella, who's very famous in the UK on YouTube for makeup and personal style tips, if she's got 6 million subscribers, if she is then saying, oh, I've done a radio show, retweet, here's a link here, we are reaching an audience that we can't reach otherwise, and it's attendant upon radio to collaborate and work with these people, not to assume, hey, we're radio and we're quite a big deal, so you might want to take us seriously, you're going to want to take our call, but to say, right, we're radio, we think you can do some interesting stuff, we think we can do some interesting stuff with you, why don't we collaborate and try and create some content together that works on the platforms for listening, watching and sharing.
Do you think this new avenue of finding talent is more gender-friendly as well? So not the massive amount of males and then just a few females, but more equal?
Yeah, absolutely. And we see diversity in all different ways for those people, because what they're able to do, irrespective of gender or racial background, is identify an audience. And they're able to find the right voice that they feel comfortable with, that connects with a decent size audience. And unlike radio, where feedback is, feedback used to be, obviously, 20 years ago, oh, we've got some letters, then it becomes emails, then it becomes the dreaded, oh, we got 50 texts, so therefore it was a good show. Yeah. and radio feedback and ratings are relatively vague still, whereas, again, these people bring with them an intense knowledge of the data for the content that they've created, and then you're able to learn as a broadcaster from them. You go, oh, that's an interesting idea. Are you sure that'll work? Well, yes, because 41% of this group always respond to this sort of feature. You go, wow, okay, well that's a whole bunch of knowledge, because particularly, one of the things I run is the Radio 1 YouTube channel. We know various things from that. Not least, there is one colossal hip hop fan in the Central African Republic, and that's because the data is so good that we see that every hip hop video that we post is watched 500% by one IP address in the CAR. That's astounding data. That's not the audience member that we get out of bed for, but it's hugely powerful. If you put that data then in the hands of broadcasters and people that want to work with you, then you've got a really good combination.
Just finally, if you want to get into Radio 1 in the future and you're not active in social media, would you be considered a non-candidate?
I don't think you'd ever be considered a non-candidate for that, but equally I don't think I can see a situation arising where there is anybody coming through who says, oh no, I'm social media, I'm so totally anonymous on social media, I'm absolutely nowhere. Because I think it would be a bit like somebody coming through going, well, I've never bought a record. It's just, it is part of how people's lives are. And so, what I would say is that we still have a real priority to make sure we get great radio presenters. And I think the majority of people that have come through the web would always agree that they start off not as great as ultimately they end up. What we've got to do with is work with those people that have got the big web following to help them become great radio presenters. And as well, in terms of the potential great radio presenters, they're bound to have some sort of social presence, and perhaps working with them to build that up.